Welcome to the IVF Journey with Dr. Michael Chapman, the podcast for couples who struggle with infertility and want to fulfill their dreams of becoming parents. In this podcast, you'll learn actionable strategies to deal with infertility from Dr. Michael Chapman, or Prof as he's affectionately known. Prof is the co-founder of IVF Australia and is a leading Australian infertility specialist who has helped over 3,000 couples realise their dreams of becoming parents. To access previous episodes packed with ideas, solutions and tips that actually work, head over to Dr. Chapman's IVF podcast on iTunes. You can also ask questions by contacting Dr. Chapman's rooms on 1-800-111-483 or by emailing him michael.chapman@ivf.com.au.
That first cry of a baby born after the long journey of IVF remains one of the most beautiful experiences in the world. As an obstetrician and an IVF specialist, I've had the privilege of experiencing this over many thousands of times in my long career, but I still remain moved by each baby's first cry. It signifies the end of a long journey and the beginning of a new life. This is Professor Michael Chapman, co-founder of IVF Australia and host of the IVF Journey podcast. Thanks for tuning in. To access all the previous episodes, head over to my website, www.theivfjourney.com, and select IVF Journey Podcast from the navigation menu. You'll also be able to find the various services that we provide at IVF Australia. So, I'm starting to get fan mail. Got an email this week from someone who entitled herself Your Fan. Very complimentary, but it's good to know that people are actually listening and are suggesting topics, and anybody that's interested in giving me something to talk about, they want to know about, then please let us know. You've got my email contact details, m.chapman@ivf.com.au. Anyway, the question that she was asking is one that I get asked quite commonly, and that is, why do we only put one embryo back at a time? Many women, many couples go, well, put two back and we get twins. Wouldn't that be wonderful? It means it's all over in one hit. We don't need to come back. We don't need to go through all the treatment again. Anyway, I've read lots of things in the newspapers, and when I've gone online about the fact that in America in particular, twin pregnancy seems quite common, and that doctors in America want to put back two embryos. So why don't we do it in Australia? Interestingly, the most recent data published by ANZARD, which is the national database for IVF, showed that Australia has a twin rate of only 3.2%, one of the smallest in the world, and that our single embryo transfer rate is 89%, which actually leads the world of IVF internationally, globally. So why have the doctors and the patients in Australia moved down the track of only putting one embryo back? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Twins are dangerous. The outcome of twins is by no means as good as a single pregnancy. In what way are they different? Well, the difference is that when you have a twin pregnancy, there's a much higher risk of delivering prematurely. That a woman's uterus, when it's filled with two babies, is likely to contract sooner than when there's just a single baby present. So when there is a high incidence of preterm delivery, then there is also a higher risk to the babies, because prematurity in twins doubles the chance of a baby dying. So if we look at the statistics, twin pregnancies, the chances of a baby dying are something in the order of 20 per 1,000 babies born, compared with 9 per 1,000 babies with a singleton pregnancy. It's double the risk. So when you have a twin pregnancy, that's what you've got to think about. So for us to actually create a situation where we're likely to cause increased numbers of babies dying is not something doctors in Australia are prepared to accept. And in fact, most patients aren't either. The second issue, and probably even more dramatic, is the risk of cerebral palsy, of brain-damaged babies. And what we know is that a twin pregnancy results in one or other of the babies having four times the risk of a singleton pregnancy. Again, that's because of prematurity. Our neonatologists are getting very good at saving babies in the period between 24 and 30 weeks of pregnancy. But those saving of babies is accompanied with a higher risk of mental damage to the brain. So with the combination of perinatal mortality doubling and cerebral palsy quadrupled, why would we put two embryos back? That message has got through both to the doctors and to the patients in Australia. We're very proud of the fact that we've done that. In some countries, they've had to legislate so that you didn't get your Medicare rebate unless you only put one embryo back. So doctors were forced into that situation. So when you sit down in front of the doctor and you've got two embryos and you ask, why aren't you putting both of them back? I've given you good reasons why not. The other part of the equation is that if you actually have one embryo put back and the other one was good enough, then it can be frozen. And modern technology, by modern I mean the last 5 years, has resulted in the freezing and thawing process to produce a pregnancy rate which is identical at least to a single embryo transfer of a fresh. So when you add one single transfer and its chance of success, and then in a subsequent cycle, if it fails, putting another one back, your success rate is at least as good and potentially might even be better than putting the two back at once. Listen to a study last year from the UK where in fact putting two embryos back just because one was good and one wasn't quite as good actually reduced the chances of success of the good embryo taking. So there may even be an adverse effect to putting two back. We also know that if you, in the good old days when we did put two back and one of them didn't survive, it seemed to have an impact on the other pregnancy, that while it went forward to a baby, that baby tended to be smaller and also deliver more prematurely. So I think the arguments are pretty straightforward. A single embryo transfer is the best way to get the best baby. And don't forget that you can access all the previous episodes by going to our website www.theivfjourney.com and select IVF Journey Podcast from the navigation menu.
Thank you for listening to the IVF Journey with Dr. Michael Chapman, the podcast which helps couples negotiate their way through the IVF journey, all the way to parenthood. You can also ask questions by contacting Dr. Chapman's rooms on 1800 111 483 or by emailing him michael.chapman@ivf.com.au.